Welcome to Nitpicking Nerds. Today we're going over something you might not think about too often.
We're going to talk about how to make better mulligan decisions in Commander.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, BZ, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. We're still bringing you daily content. Is anyone else bringing you daily content? Probably not. Hit subscribe to get more of it, and then go to our Patreon, where you can support us with actual dollars, and you can go to the link in the description, which goes to tcgplayer.com. Buy the cards you would normally buy anyway, because everyone buys cards, and then we get a kickback on the order. We just get supported, and you don't spend any extra money. What are we doing?
We're talking about mulligans today. We're going to talk about how to make better decisions. Mulliganing is very important in Commander for a lot of reasons. We'll talk about all those. But the fact is, you got to make good mulligan decisions. If you don't, you're going to get punished super hard a lot of the times.
Yeah, first thing I want to talk about is like Commander mulligans. They're higher risk compared to any other casual format. Like, if I'm just going to sleeve up my 60 card, no banless deck and play against somebody in a casual game, doesn't really matter what I do. In a sense, the game's going to be over real quick if I make a mistake. If you make a mistake and keep a bad hand in Commander, you could be stuck there for like literally an hour and a half. Just sitting there doing nothing because you got either steamrolled and died or can't play spells.
Yeah, those happen a lot. I think one thing to go over right away here is, how do you mulligan? What are mulligans? Because I don't think everyone knows the Mulligan Rule. Most people do. But so the Mulligan Rule is that you draw your opening 7. You choose to keep it or mulligan. If you mulligan the first time in Commander, you put it back, shuffle up, draw a fresh 7. Nothing else happens. Freebie. Every other time after that, you draw a fresh 7. Then you go, okay, I want to keep this 7. Take one of those cards from the 7 and put it on the bottom of your library. That's the Mulligan Rule that is currently being used in all Magic, except for the freebie part. You don't get a freebie outside of Commander.
Yeah, it's so casual. You literally just get a free mulligan. We're going to talk about that later. But your opening hand actually in Commander has 8 cards. You have to take into account your Commander. Mm-hmm. Sometimes your Commander's like 8 mana. It doesn't factor a ton into your opening hand. That will more count towards like deck building when you decide how many big spells do I need. But your hand has 8 cards in it, literally. So if your Commander is like a 3-drop, factor it into what your hand's going to look like when we give you all of the further advice we're about to give you.
Yes, you want to, exactly. So your Commander is a huge part of your deck. Your deck is designed around that card almost always. So if it's an early drop, obviously, if you don't have a lot of early plays, you have your Commander to maybe fill in a slot where you would have maybe a ramp spell. It's like, oh, I can just put my Commander there instead.
Well, also, a hand with no creatures in it has 1 creature in it. You have to have 1 creature or a Planeswalker or some kind of proactive play to make. So, you could potentially keep a no creature hand, but in like limited, you go, well, if I don't draw a creature, I lose.
Yeah, limited for sure. There's other formats where you can keep no creatures. What's next? What do we talk about next? Optimal hands. The optimal hand is going to contain 3 to 4 lands and 3 to 4 spells, depending on what your ratio of lands were. I think another thing for this is and this is why we build our decks with a lot of ramp, I'm highly looking for at least 1 ramp spell in my opening hand when I start a game of Commander. It is, if I see a 3 spell, 4 land, no ramp, I'm a little hesitant. I mean, not as much as, I'm still, having the right land ratio is more important. So it's like, I probably might still keep this, but that ramp spell, it's super important.
Yeah, it really changes the speed of how your game goes. If you play a 2-mana ramp spell, you're ahead a turn every single turn of the game. So it could represent 7 or 8 mana, depending on how long the game goes. That's really huge, as opposed to, I'm going to play a 3-drop and then a 4-drop and then a 5-drop, and let's see what happens. We're going to say that 2-landers and 5-landers are on the risky side. I usually don't keep those. The exception is 2-landers plus a bunch of ramp, or 5-landers plus your 2 spells are like really good or card draw.
Yeah, the 5-lander, this also comes down to your deck. If you're playing in a Azusa deck and you keep a 5-lander, well, that's fine. That's super reasonable in a Azusa deck. If you're playing a deck that is like CDH levels, a 2-lander's also going to be fine, because it's like,
well, you're going to have ramp to back it up.
Yeah,
because you probably wouldn't keep most 2-landers where your first play is Demonic Tutor or something.
I guess that's fair. Yeah. Okay. So 2-landers are tough. You want to hit land drops in EDH. You really don't want to be missing them. So having maybe another way to back up a 2-lander would be some early card draw. If you have ways to put new cards in your hand, maybe a Faithless Looting to make sure you're going to hit your land drops. Those kind of things can make a 2-lander a little less risky.
Yeah. If I have a Night's Whisper, I'm probably keeping a 2-lander. Maybe like a Chartic Horse or something. If I have a 5-lander, like you said with that Azusa deck, I'm not keeping 5 lands, Rampant Growth, rampaging bailouts, I'm going to keep like 5 lands in like a tireless tracker.
Yeah, some way to get in their cards. I don't know. I wouldn't even be that mad about the rampaging bailout hand. Just that's kind of what.
What are you doing?
What are you doing with Azusa? That's just what Azusa. That's the Azusa problem. Is that
you run it? Your hand is gone on turn 3. Like that's what I'm talking about. I don't want that. I want like Life from the Loam, tracker, some kind of landfall get advantage if I'm keeping 5 lands.
Which your deck should have plenty of because you're Azusa. So first and foremost, don't be afraid to mulligan, especially the first time. It's absolutely free. If you have even if you have like a 3-lander, no ramp, ship it back. Take that risk because I don't want to end up getting completely screwed out of a game because I just don't draw a ramp for that game.
Yeah, I tend to use my free mulligan like half the time or more. You just don't want to be stuck with an okay, meh hand. You have more pressure in constructed and 1v1 formats to actually get off the ground and do something. But I can just take a free mulligan. I can't do that in the other formats where I'm forced to keep a 7 card or like my win percentage goes down. If you take a free mull or even a mull to 6, I don't think your win percentage goes down almost at all.
You want to take free mulligans a lot. They are super important. Don't just be like, okay, this hand might function. No, don't do that. Play it out in your head. Go, if I draw this, how is the game going to play out? How many lands do you have to draw before the hand's functional? If your hand has a 2-lander, do you need to draw 2 more lands? Because that's rough. To hit 2 more lands is going to be tough to guarantee. So you might want to mulligan that. But if you have a 2-lander, it's like, well, if I hit 1 more land, then let's just say this cultivate's going to make sure I hit the one after that. It's going to put me in a position. Stuff like that. It's like if you want to look at your hand and say, this is what will allow me to play Magic if this happens.
Each time you mulligan, the risk of what you could lose goes up. The first mulligan decision, there's no risk. You get another 7. Then there's the risk of going to 6, which is not that bad. 6 to 5, I think, is pretty big, and I would tend to keep most 6s. We're kind of talking about the 7, the second 7, and the 6 when we talk about these rules or guides or heuristics. So just keep in mind that once you get a little more desperate, probably just keeping hands that function at all.
Yeah, I mean, you do as you go down. If you're at 6, it's like going to 5 is such a huge fall from 6, and going to 6 from 7 also a huge fall. Those are a lot bigger. So if you could, that's when you want to start being like, okay, does this hand function? Like 7, you got 7 when you have all the time to mulligan. Like you should mulligan those hands very aggressively. Then when you're going from 7 to 6, it's a little there's a lot less leeway.
Think about it.
Yes,
but you might still do it. I think.
Yeah,
we're talking about the first and second decision to mulligan.
Mm-hmm.
Third and fourth after that is like you're really unlucky at this point, and let's just try to salvage something. But we're talking about keeping your first 7, mulliganing it to your second 7, keeping that, or mulliganing to your 6.
So we're talking about how you want to be avoiding these mulligans when you can, if you can. Well, something you can do to avoid them is, well, build your deck a little better. If you have 10 6+ drops in your deck, that's going to put like 1 in your opening hand most of the time.
Yeah, avoiding mulligans definitely starts in the deck building process. If you, let's say you draw an opening hand, and it's 3 spells and 3 lands, but and then there's one other spell, and it's an 8 drop or a 7 drop, and you want to start looking at, what are my first few turns going to look like? Well, you have to discount this card. It's basically already a mulligan, so the fact that it's in your hand at all, and you have no realistic way to get to it anytime soon, just kind of puts you at 6 cards, and you're stuck with 7. And if you want to go down to 6 cards after another mulligan, and you still have one of these, now you're basically at 5, and you just get completely screwed because you have too many 7 drops in your deck.
Well, kind of. The F5 thing, if you have one of them, it goes in basically that's the card you're putting on the bottom, but that's regardless. What you're saying still stands.
I mean, if you're left with a 5.
Yeah, okay.
Or left with a 7.
Oh yeah, then you're in huge trouble. If you have 2 7s, you put one of those 7s on the bottom, then yeah. So you just want to limit your high drops. You want to make sure that you want to play the high drops you want to play still. Like your deck still needs some of those big swingy spells. They're important to EDH, but you got to make sure you're not playing too many because they just clog up opening hands so easily.
Yeah, how many cards? If you're looking at one of my decks, me and Joe build decks a little differently. If you're looking at one of my decks, the number of like 5 drops and higher is probably like 10 of every, like 5, 6, 7s. It might be less than that, but I usually play like 4 5 drops, 2 6 drops, and then like 1 spell that's any bigger than that.
Yeah, it depends on my deck. I have a Stompy deck that's probably like 20 of them, but other than that, I'm usually around the same lines. Like there's probably 5+, there's 10 spells that are 5+ in that range, and then everything else is just on the low end.
That could even be an overestimate. We don't play a ton of big, clunky, expensive cards that gum up your hands and make it impossible to figure out where your turns are going to start out going.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're playing Stompy. Then just throw whatever you want, because Stompy's great.
Next tip, third one of the 4 we have, is analyze your hand through the context of your deck. Every deck wants to be doing something different. So you have the tagline of your deck. I want to do X, Y, and Z and win in this way. Well, let's start with my opening hand. What can I do? Oh, I'm going to develop my mana and get this going and then cast my commander and then use its ability next turn. That's what the first few turns are going to look like. Or your graveyard deck, and you're trying to fill your graveyard and then take advantage of it. Maybe cast your Carador for 3 mana or something like that. And if you're a graveyard deck, you got to look at your opening hand and say, does this have any way to fill my graveyard? Does this have any way to do the thing I want to do the most?
Yes. I think you can go back to the Azusa thing. It's a great extreme example to use. If I open up with a 6-lander and a Untitled Chapter, I go, yuck, this is awful. But then I look to the command zone and it's Azusa. All of a sudden, this is not awful. This went from being awful to, oh, this hand's actually functional and it'll do something. There is no deck probably besides maybe Azusa. Maybe there's probably another extreme example that I'm keeping that hand in.
Yeah, if I look at my Carador deck, I'm like, I'm not, no.
Never are you keeping a 6-land Untitled Chapter in a Carador type deck. Not happening. Know your deck's game plan. Understand what your commander does. What does your commander add to your opening hand? These are things that you just have. It's all about understanding what you've brought to the table. You know your 99. You know your commander. You have all that information, and you can use it all to make a decision.
Yeah, this is part of the reason we always want our removal and stuff to have synergy, because I've drawn plenty of hands, because I've just played so many games, where, I'm in a token deck, but I can't make tokens. My commander is like Keskit, but I don't have any early ways because I drew 2 of my spot removal spells and like a Planeswalker or something and then a big top end thing that synergizes. So I just can't activate my Keskit on the first 4 turns of the game. It's like, I'm shipping that. Goodbye. And the reason we want our removal and everything synergized maximally is just literally stops you from mulliganing like this.
This is a great way to think about it. So you have a Keskit hand where you have a Terminate, okay? And you have so you have let's just say Goblin. What makes 2 goblins? What's that called? Goblin fodder.
Sure.
So it's like all you need is one more thing to sacrifice. Oh, if this Terminate is a Shriek Maw, all of a sudden I have a removal spell that is worse, but I get to go play it for 2, activate my Keskit, and I get all the value out of that. That is where these synergies are so important. That's why we don't play cards like Terminate, because you don't get the synergy that you get out of a card like Shriek Maw in a deck like that.
See, we still found a way to bring it back to hate on Terminate. We're never going to stop doing that.
Yeah, I mean, synergy is important when deck building.
How about not even hate? Correctly evaluate.
Yes. Next here we have think ahead and plan your hypothetical turns. We've gone over this. You got to know what's going to happen. We said it. I think it's so important that even though it wasn't the main point, we kept bringing it up because these first turns are going to shape the way the whole game is going to play out.
Yeah, if you have a mana dork in your hand, that's going to kind of change a lot. You go to turn 3, not turn 2.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't need if I have a mana dork and 3 3-drops, I feel a lot better than if I have 3 3-drops and no mana dork. That feels rough.
Yeah, similarly, like one of the classic trap hands is 1-land Soul Ring, but there's hands where 1-land Soul Ring is like the best keep ever. You go because you might have a follow up, like okay, land Soul Ring, Signet, and then next turn I have a 5-drop to cast or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or just a way to like draw cards. If you go land Soul Ring, then you untap and you play like
compulsive research. You're not going to be stuck on lands.
Yeah, anything exactly. So you're going to look for lands, and then sometimes you have to admit when you keep those hands, do be aware that you will be screwed by variants sometimes. They're still risky. Yeah, you're going to be able to get out of them a lot, but sometimes you'll go draw 3. Oh, there's not a land in here. I'm going to lose now. Okay. And maybe you should have mulliganed more aggressively, but you took a risk there was much lower risk than the average hand.
Well, the other thing is with a 1-land Soul Ring specifically, you're not screwed if you miss a land drop next turn because you have Soul Ring. It's like the best Magic card ever. It's 2 lands. As long as your Soul Ring doesn't get blown up, I think that's the risk.
Oh, sometimes that happens. Yeah, that is also a risk where it's like 1-land Soul Ring. All right, I'll keep, and then somebody's got the Vandal Blast, and it's like, well, I guess I'll do it. It's like, oh, what have I done?
What have you done? This is why Soul Ring isn't a good Magic card, Joe. Sometimes you keep a bad hand and then lose.
Yeah, because
why would you play Soul Ring?
Because you overestimate how good Soul Ring is.
Yeah, because it's so good that it actually can get you out of the situation, and then when someone realizes that, you get burned.
So last thing I want to mention here, and this isn't really an official mulliganing thing or anything.
Tip number 4.5.
It's not really a tip. It's just how I am when I play at both Spell Table, in person, and whenever I play EDH. I let people mulligan more than once free because I want to play Magic. The thing is, if I know that it's such a high variance format, we're playing 100 card singleton. Shuffling that deck, if it's actually random, there is a lot of garbage draws you can have. Of course, there's a lot of great draws you can have too, but sometimes you might draw 3 or 4 of those garbage hands in a row, and you're like, well, I could have never played with any of those hands. I let people do free mulligans. I think it is. I think as long as you're not a CDH or super spiky like competitive group, they're fine because the decks you're trying to just have fun. When fun is again, CDH can be fun. I'm not saying CDH can't be fun. I realize that I kind of said something that could have been confused.
No, they've already commented.
They've already commented.
It's over.
Damn it.
Forget it.
But as long as the decks aren't overpowered, I want everyone to play because if I sit down with 4 players and that guy mulligans the 3, he's not playing, and I don't want him not to play. I sat down with everybody so we all could play.
I think I'm in the vast majority when I say I don't really mind getting screwed every once in a while. I think I would prefer to keep myself to that rule. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I just kind of not too big on house rules, but I will let somebody else just have a freebie if they're like, I guess I have to read them a little. Like, oh, this seems like it's going to really bug them. Okay, just take a 7th card.
I won't do it at a random. I won't do it with complete randoms. If I sat down with strangers, I'm not going to do it because I don't know what their deck is. It's like if we all sit down with decks and we really aren't sure what our power level is, that guy might have CDH like Yuriko going.
We're just talking about like Rule 0, basically.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm talking about you sit down with your friends. You know your friends' decks. You do know your friends' decks, and when you do, you can be nice and give more mulligans. And something about that, they'll give them back to you once in a while.
Yeah, and you know your friends' intentions. They're not trying to screw you because they're never going to see you.
Yeah, when I mulligan, I had this. You guys did it for me the other day. I mulligan with my Stompy deck like 4 times. Like, these aren't functional hands, and you're like, well, go ahead. And it's like, thank you, I appreciate this.
Plus, side value. When you let them mulligan extra times and then they draw a nut hand, you just get to make them feel terrible the whole time.
You get to make fun of them the whole time.
Really? Oh, cool.
They draw their opening hand like, okay, I'll keep this, and then it's like not that good probably, and then they draw Mana Crypt off the top and they go.
Or it's just they just draw a hand with Mana Crypt in it, and you're just like, feel good about that.
Something you can also do in house rules is if you know your hand's stupidly good, say I'm gonna put this card in the bottom and show your friends, and they'll let you. I've done that before too. It's like
yeah, I've done that. I have no interest.
I had Soul Ring last game. I don't want to have Soul Ring. I'm putting Soul Ring on the bottom, guys. I've done it before. It's just. These are just tips for having fun, and these aren't objectively more fun, but there's things that we've used to make games more interesting.
Yeah, I've put Mana Crypt on the bottom 1 or 2 times, or like Cyclonic Rift. I think I did that. I have like 1 deck that plays it, but back then I had more, and I'm like, this again? Nah.
Yeah, those cards can all feel a little samey, but don't feel guilty playing your good cards either.
That's just Rule 0. We're talking about do whatever you want. Like rule, it's not a rule. We've given you all the like. Actual tangible advice, but this is more of a philosophy for playing with your friends.
Yeah, exactly. You should play for fun with your friends, especially. But that's our video, and special shout outs to all of our patrons. We love you guys all as much as we can without making you uncomfortable. You guys are known as the Poopy Babies, and you're awesome.
And now that you have all of the proper information on how to make better mulligan decisions in Commander, you can go to the TCG Player link and mulligan and keep the cards you buy. But we get mulliganed kickback money for you buying the cards. But you didn't spend the money. It's not your money. You spend the money on the cards that you're going to get. And then we get money.
That was the worst TCG
shout-out my best shout-out
I've ever heard. They don't even know what happens or what they're supposed to do. So, guys, there's a link in the description below.
Go there and then buy the cards you want, and we get a kickback.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
That's what I said.
Kind of.
I said it twice now.
So you added Mulligan.
I just repeated myself word for word.
Yeah, that's not what.
Go rewind it. I'm getting us extra watch time. Go rewind it and try to find out if I said it the same way.
He didn't. Even I know that. I guess I am physically here. You're not. You're here. You're in that little camera there.
No, they're here.
This is like this is like old man witchcraft. Well, last thing.
Is this our tidbit? What's going on?
Before tidbit. Before tidbit, our Discord, head over to our Discord. All a bunch of Nitpicking Nerds fans hanging out, playing Magic, talking about the Nitpicking Nerds, using our silly emotes, all that stuff.
And I realize we never say this, but the end of the video is always a time where we take to give you a tidbit about our lives, which is why we always just say tidbit, but I realize we haven't said that in months.
No.
We just say tidbit? Like tidbit question mark? And then the other person's like, oh yeah, here's this fact about bees, or like, oh, here's some deep philosophical nonsense. And it's like, they're probably like, what are they doing?
Well, I mean, I've been holding this one because I've been meaning to say it for the past forever now. For the past like 3 tidbits, but we went off about Mighty Ducks, and I don't remember.
Is Ralph Macchio in shape?
Is Ralph Macchio in shape?
I don't know.
So what I've been meaning to say is, me and BZ have a house, and we're getting it the first of the month. We'll be moving in probably between the first and something. Well, it depends on how things work out. But we are getting a place, which means one new studio setup. That's going to be a little bit. I'm trying to determine. I'm going to talk with BZ. We haven't talked about it a lot. I want to do it. I don't know if we want to set up like this, or if we want to switch things. I want it to look great. And
we don't have to paint the room or anything, so it's going to be this exact setup. While we're in the other house, we're going to commute a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to stay here for a little bit.
Like a month, maybe.
Exactly. And then we're going to get a setup that looks great. It's going to be our quote-unquote professional setup.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. And
you'll turn on one of our videos fully clothed, and then when you click off the video, you'll realize my socks have been gone this whole time.
Yeah, your socks will be blown off. And get excited, because in the next month, 2 months, the Kickstarter will officially be getting started. I am gathering all the information we need to know
doing our homework.
How much is it going to cost for us to renovate the basement there to make it into a game space area? How much is it going to cost for all of the equipment, the cameras, the mics, everything? And
how much is it going to cost for bigger Obi-Wan and Anakin action figures that we have in the back? Some people probably don't even know what those are.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Anakin Obi-Wan action figures, we will at 100K be getting a big Obi-Wan, so we're 1/4 there.
We're quarter of the way to a big Obi-Wan.
Yeah, which is like $2,000. I don't want to.
No one asked for it.
Nobody. I did.
Yeah,
I asked for it.
No fan has ever asked, "Can you get a bigger Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan action figure?" Yeah, we're like, okay, for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, everything we do is for the fans. Especially this tidbit where we rant. Even though this was actual important information, we usually rant about Mighty Ducks or other garbage. I can't think of anything else but Mighty Ducks now.
It usually devolves.
It's the only thing I can think of is Mighty Ducks and Emilio Estevez. And is Ralph Macchio in shape? Find out in the next episode of the Nitpicking Nerds. Peace out, Tribe Scout.